my lords would find it at page 128. Lord, this is appointment of the governor, and this would have tremendous bearing for your lordship's consideration, because Lord, the concept which is going on, that what is the significance and sanctity attached to the office of the governor? Lord, that we come to know from the Constituent Assembly debates. Lord, it's not, my Lord, an asylum for retired politicians, as, my Lord, we understand. It has its own sanctity. And, my Lord, the framers of the Constitution have debated on it, that why we need governor, why we need governors with the powers which we are going to confer upon it, and in the federalism which we have adopted, as against, my Lord, the absolute federalism in United States, where each state or province has its own constitution, has its own Supreme Court, has its own, my Lord, way of governance. We have not adopted that.
Even dual citizenship.
The dual citizenship. So, my Lord, they have examined that center will have to play a role in the governance of the provinces, which is now states, and that is how, my Lord, the position of governor is conceived. Lord, please have a look at page 128. Lord, section 46 is the peri materia provision, or, my Lord, if I may say, the precursor to the present 155, where the governors were appointed. Lord, page 128 bottom, Government of Bengal, Madras and Bombay. The presidencies of Fort William in Bengal, Fort St. George and Bombay are subject to the provisions of this act, governed by the governors in council of those presidencies respectively, and the two former presidencies are in this act referred to as the presidencies of Bengal and Madras. Then, my Lord, comes 35 Act. Lord, initially the idea was that the governor should also be an elected person, so that he also wields the same democratic sanctity, and which is rejected by the framers of the Constitution. I'll show that, my Lord. Section 48, my Lord, 1935 Act, again, my Lord, the colonial era Act. The governor of a province is appointed by His Majesty by a commission under the Royal Sign Manual. The provisions of the third schedule to, my Lord, not relevant. Now, my Lord, draft constitution, my Lord, which was prepared by Mr. Rao, the governor of a province shall be elected by direct vote of all persons who have the right to vote at a general election for the legislative assembly of the province. My Lord, Dr. Rao introduced the concept of governor being an elected person. Then, my Lord, the drafting committee chaired by Dr. Ambedkar ji, my Lord, made this. Again, my Lord, provided for election. The governor of a state shall be elected by direct vote of all persons who have the right to vote at a general election for the legislative assembly in the state. So his election would be confined to that particular state. Then, my Lord, the drafting committee gives a second option for consideration. An alternative is given. That is, my Lord, this. The governor of the state shall be appointed by the president by warrant under his hand and seal from a panel of 4 candidates to be elected by the members of legislative assembly of the state, or where there is a legislative council in the state, by all the members of legislative assembly and of the legislative council of the state assembled at a joint meeting in accordance with the system of proportionate representation by means of single transferable vote, and the voting at such election shall be by secret ballot. So they were visionaries. They gave 2 options, appointment or election. Appointment, my Lord, again by indirect way of election only. Now, my Lord, please see the debate. My Lord, at page 130 it starts. The Honorable President says, as regards this, honorable members will see that there are 2 alternatives suggested by the drafting committee. The amendments are referring to either the one or the other alternative. So I think the best way is to take an amendment in favor of one of the alternatives, and if then is accepted, then all other amendments relating to the alternative drop automatically. We take 2006, and this is, and if this is carried, then we go to the second. 2006 is the number of that amendment.
Number of them.
Yes. Then, my Lord, Ghanshyam Singh Gupta. Sir, I suggest this. The amendments, of course, may be taken, but first we might form our opinion as to whether we want the first or second alternative. So that if we want the first alternative, then the amendment it would come, my lord, in kindly bear with. Then, my lord, Sri Brajeshwar Prasad, my lord, this is important. For my lord, he suggests that for Article 131, the following be substituted. Governor of a state shall be appointed by the president by warrant under his hand and seal. He said no election, whether as per alternative 1 or alternative 2. And the reason or the justification, my lord, he places before the assembly. The great merit of this amendment, which stands in the name of the 5 or 6 members of this house, is that it lays down a simpler procedure than the prescribed either in the article or in the alternative suggested by the drafting committee. I feel, sir, that in the interest of all India unity and with a view to encouraging centripetal tendencies, my lord, that is a tendency, my lord, to unification, the strong cohesion, my lord, if I have used uh, uh, policies, tendencies, it is necessary that the authority of the government of India should be maintained intact over the provinces. To say that the president may nominate from a panel of names really means restricting the choice of president. It gives power into the hands of the legislature. It is necessary, sir, that the president should be free from the influence of the legislator. I feel that the governor may be one from the province or from another province. Personally, I feel that the man from a province should not be appointed in the same province because it gives encouragement for vociferous tendencies. So, my lord, that tendencies, my lord, internal fixed, etc., etc. So I say that choice of the president should be unrestricted and unfettered. Sir, I have nothing more to add. This is a simple proposition and I commend it for acceptance of the House. Then Alladi Krishna Swami Iyer. Sir, in view of the decision that was reached some 2 years ago and in view of the fact that I feel convinced that only right course, taking all the circumstances into consideration, is to accept the amendment of Mr. Brajeshwar Prasad. I should like to say a few words in support of the amendment. In the consideration of this question, the main points to be remembered are that this assembly has accepted the introduction of responsible government in different states, that the governor is merely a constitutional head of the province, and the real executive power had been vested in ministry responsible to the lower house in the different states. No dispute or difficulty. The real power vests in the elected people who are elected by the legislators, by the people of that state as legislators. Uh, the question for consideration before this House is whether, under these circumstances, there is any point in going through an expensive and elaborate machinery of election based upon universal suffrage. After giving my best consideration to the various proposals put forward, one, of choice of governor on the basis of universal suffrage, two, of election of the governor by a majority of lower house or of both houses, whether on the principle of proportionate representation or otherwise. Third, of a selection of a panel by the lower house in the state from which the choice, lower house is Lok Sabha, not legislative council, but legislative assembly, wherever there is any. Choice is to be made by the president of the union, or four, if appointment by the president in consultation with the cabinet. I feel that the wisest course to adopt is the last one. If the governor is properly functioning as the constitutional head, the expenses involved in going through the process of election is out of all proportion to the powers vested in the governor under the constitution. There is also the danger of governor who has been elected by the people at large getting into a clash with the premier. Well, that is the chief minister of the state. He has two power centers, my lord, and the cabinet responsible to the legislature, which itself has been elected on the basis of universal suffrage. Again, the election itself, under modern conditions, will have to be fought out on a party ticket. The fact is that even at or during the elections, the party will have to rally round a leader who will presumably be the future premier, the chief minister of the province. Is the rallying to be round the governor's name or premier's name? In the normal working of the government, also there is a danger of a clash between minister and the governor, whereas the whole basis of the constitutional structure we are erecting depends upon the harmony between the legislature and the executive, and between the executive and the formal head of the government. There is no correspondence between the governor of a state in United States of America and governor under our constitution. In the case of a governor of a state under United States, the real and substantial executive power is vested in the governor. There is a distinct separation between the executive and the legislature in the United States. A proper analogy has to be sought for the Constitution of Canada, where a responsible governor obtains. In Canada, the lieutenant governor of each province is appointed by the governor general, that is, by the governor general on the advice of the cabinet, similar like India, my lords. There are many features of resemblance and similarity between the Canadian Constitution and our Constitution, which, by some critics, has been considered to be quasi federal. The system, in the main, we have accepted is the principle of responsible government obtaining in the dominions or in different parts of the Commonwealth. Nowhere does the system of election of governor exist where the institution of responsible government is the main feature of the Constitution. In the normal working of the Constitution, I have no doubt that convention will grow up of the government of India consulting the provincial cabinet in the election of the governor. If the choice is left to the president and his cabinet, the president may, in conceivable circumstances, with due regard to the conditions of the province, choose a person of undoubted ability and position in public life who at the same time has not been mixed up in the provincial party struggle or factions, is not a part of the local state politics. But today, it appears to be very obvious to us. But kindly visualize the vision of the framers of the Constitution
while appointing the governors.
Different point, but deviations or, my lord, some exceptional situations, my lord, may not guide your lordships in interpreting the Constitution. The real point, my lord, I was trying to make is divorce the facts. That look at the vision of those, my lord, who were discussing this in 1947, and they could visualize these are the problems which will arise if a person is to be elected to power centers directly. Correct? Government, the cabinet is answerable and responsible to the cabinet, to the legislature. The cabinet is answerable to and accountable to the legislature. Well, thereafter, the bold part, the central fact to be remembered is that the governor is to be constitutional head, a sagacious counselor, and advisor to the ministry. The governor chosen by the government of India, presumably with the consent of the provincial government, is likely to discharge his functions better than one who is elected on a political party ticket by province as a whole based on universal suffrage. Now, my lord, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Lord, says this, my lord. Sir, this debate has already elicited so many speeches that probably every conceivable argument for and against this proposal has been placed before this court. I do not know what I can add to it. My lord, kindly come to, my lord, the bold part. There was the Union Powers Committee, my lord, headed by Nehruji. There was the Provincial Model Constitution Committee, headed by my lord Sardar Patel, of which my colleague, the Deputy Prime Minister, was the chairman. After all these considerations and discussions, those committees felt that a certain change was desirable. Thus, even those like Sardar Patel, who themselves put this forward in this house, the other view, feel that the change would be desirable. This was the flexibility of Sardar Patel, my lord. He chaired the provincial committee, took a particular view, and thereafter takes the holistic view and say that some change is desirable. Now, the reasons for this have been stated before the House, and I need not go into them, except to say that I myself originally was not very definite, if I may say so, in my mind as to which would be the preferable course. I preferred something, but not to the extent of considering it as absolutely necessary. But the more I thought about it, the more I conferred with others and discussed with them, the more I felt that from almost every point of view, this proposal that is moved of a nominated governor in the present context of the constitution was not only desirable from practical point of view, but from democratic point of view too, it was desirable and worthwhile. My lord, now I can skip that, my lord, and kindly come to the bold part. My lord, this is the way, my lord, I generally make it bold so that the relevant part is before your lordships, but we don't consume your lordship's time in reading them. And I must tell your lordships, my lord, I have selected passages from the Constituent Assembly debates which are relevant according to me for deciding this issue by your lordships. There are other debates also on these subjects. Entire debate is placed in volume 4. If your lordships would like to, 4.2, my lord, if your lordships would like to go through it. But these are the relevant debates, my lord, from the standpoint of the issues which your lordships are advising us, my lord. But on the whole, it probably would be desirable to have people from outside, eminent people, sometimes people who have not taken too great a part in politics. Politicians would probably like a more active domain for their activities, but there may be an eminent educationist or persons eminent in other walks of life who would naturally, while cooperating fully with the government and carrying out the policy of the government, at any rate, helping in every way so that the policy might be carried out, he would themselves represent before the public someone slightly above the party and thereby in fact help that government more than if he was considered as a part of the party machine. I do submit that there is really a more democratic procedure than the other procedure in the sense that the latter would not make the democratic machine work smoothly. Then, Dr. Ambedkar, my lord, the first part of the Dr. Ambedkar ji is only, my lord, the description or a paraphrasing of what has happened. The second part would be relevant, my lord. Well, that power, your lordship gets, my lord. Well, that power an elected or a nominated governor will have, if he happens to call the wrong person to form a ministry, he will soon find to his cost that he has made a wrong choice. That is not a thing that could be avoided by having an elected governor. Such a governor may have a friend of his choice whom he can call in to form the ministry, and that issue can be settled by the House itself by a motion of no confidence or confidence. But that is not the aspect of the question which is material. The aspect of the question which is material is the governor going to have any power of interference in the working of a ministry which is composed of a majority in local legislature? If that governor has no power of interference in the internal administration of a ministry which has a majority, then it seems to me that the question whether he is nominated or elected is wholly immaterial. That is the way I look at it. And I want to tell the House that in coming to their decision, they should not bother them more or less academic question whether governor has to be nominated or to be elected. They should bear in mind this question: what are the powers which the governor is going to be endowed? That matter, I submit, is not before us today. We shall take it up at a later stage when we come to question of Article 175 and 188. Please note there, my lord, in your lordship's note, 175 is the draft article, which is Article 200 today. And 188 is emergency powers, my lord, which are not, which we are not
concerned at this stage.
No, not concerned. And probably by amendment or the addition of some other clauses which would give him powers. The House should be careful and watchful of these new sections that will be placed before them at a later stage. But today it seems to me, if the Constitution remains in principle the same as we intend that it should be, the governor should be a purely constitutional governor with not power of interference in the administration of the province. Then it seems to me quite immaterial whether he is nominated or elected. Now, my lord, what is accepted is 131 draft article. The governor of the state shall be appointed by the president by warrant under his hand and seal. My lord, both the alternatives were given up, and Vijeshwar Prasad's amendment that he should be appointed by the president, nothing more, nothing less, should be there. So far as his powers are concerned, we will consider when we consider present article 200, and I'll be able to show that this wish, desire, and what was in mind of the constitutional framers did reflect in article 200, that he would have only those powers which are conferred and nothing more, maintaining supremacy of the elected wing. I'll come to that.